Number 10. Airbags. Airbags save your life by punching you in the face. When you crash, a small explosive inflates the bag in approximately 30 milliseconds. The bag hits you at around 200 miles per hour. Early airbags were designed for an average-sized man sitting upright. If you were shorter or sat closer to the wheel, the bag would hit you before it was fully inflated, which meant it hit you even harder. In the 1990s, airbags killed over 100 people, most of them women and children who were smaller than the crash test dummy the system was designed for. Then came the Takata airbag scandal. Takata made airbags that used a cheap, unstable chemical propellant. After a few years, especially in humid climates, that chemical could degrade. When the airbag deployed, it would detonate with too much force, launching metal shrapnel directly at the driver's face and neck. Over 100 million vehicles were recalled worldwide. At least 27 people were killed by their own airbags in what were often minor fender benders. A safety feature that was supposed to protect you in a crash became the thing that killed you instead. Number 9. Foam insulation on the space shuttle. When you launch a rocket, the fuel tanks get incredibly cold, so moisture from the air forms ice. Ice flying off a rocket at launch is very bad. NASA's solution was to coat the external fuel tank in foam insulation. The problem was that foam kept breaking off during launch. NASA knew about this for years. Foam had been breaking off since the first shuttle launch in 1981. Engineers wrote reports and raised concerns, but since nothing catastrophic had happened yet, the problem was normalized. It became an acceptable risk. On January 16, 2003, Columbia launched. 82 seconds into the flight, a piece of foam the size of a suitcase broke off. Traveling at over 500 miles per hour, it slammed into the leading edge of Columbia's left wing, punching a hole the size of a dinner plate in the heat shield. Those heat shield tiles existed for one reason: to protect the shuttle from the 3,000-degree heat of re-entry. Some engineers on the ground suspected major damage and begged management to get satellite images of the wing to check. The requests were denied. On February 1st, Columbia began re-entry. Superheated plasma entered the hole in the wing and tore the shuttle apart from the inside. All 7 crew members were lost. An investigation found that the disaster was not a freak accident, but the result of a broken safety culture. The foam had broken off so many times without causing a disaster that people stopped seeing it as a danger. The insulation that was supposed to protect the shuttle from ice ended up destroying it on the way home. Number 8. Football helmets. Before helmets, players wore leather caps that did almost nothing. Players were terrified of head injuries, so they tackled with their arms and shoulders. Then came the hard plastic helmet. Suddenly, players felt invincible. When you feel protected, you take more risks. Psychologists call this risk compensation. Players started doing something called spearing, lowering their head and driving the top of their helmet directly into another player. Like a human missile, the helmet enabled it. While the helmet protects the skull from fractures, it does nothing for the brain floating inside. When your head stops suddenly, your brain keeps moving, slamming into the inside of your skull. That's a concussion. And players were getting them constantly because the helmet made them feel safe enough to use their head as a weapon. Hits got harder every decade. Players got bigger and faster. The helmets got better, and players just hit harder. Scientists discovered CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated hits to the head. They found it in 99% of donated NFL player brains they studied. The helmet still can't stop it, because no helmet can stop your brain from sloshing around inside your skull. The hard plastic shell gave players the confidence to inflict damage they never would have dared to before. Number 7. Levees and flood walls. Rivers flood. For millions of years, they've flooded the same low-lying land. Then humans built levees, giant walls of earth and concrete, to hold the river back. Suddenly, land that used to be underwater every spring became prime real estate. Cities like New Orleans grew in areas that are essentially a natural bowl, in some places sitting 6 feet below sea level. But the levees created a false sense of security. The safer people feel, the more they build in dangerous areas. The more they build, the worse the eventual disaster. Researchers call it the levee effect. Levees also stop the river from depositing sediment, which is what naturally builds up the land. Without it, the land actually sinks, making the city even more vulnerable over time. You are slowly descending, while a wall of concrete is the only thing between you and catastrophe. The wall has to be perfect forever. The river only has to get lucky once. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, the levees failed not because the storm was impossibly strong, but because they were poorly built and maintained. The catastrophic flooding that followed wasn't a natural disaster. It was an engineering disaster. Had no levees been built, the area would never have been so densely populated. Number 6. Password complexity requirements. You've been there. You create a password and the website tells you to add a capital letter, a number, and a special character. Now your password is capital T R0UB @DOR #47 exclamation mark. Completely unguessable, also completely unmemorable, so you write it on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. The most secure password you've ever created is now also the most visible. The guy who invented these rules, Bill Burr, worked for a US government security agency and published the guidelines in 2003. In 2017, he publicly apologized. He said he got it wrong and that his own research was flawed. He realized when you force people to make complex passwords, they just take a simple word and swap letters for symbols. And because it's annoying to remember, you use it on every website. So when one site gets hacked, all of your accounts are compromised. Security experts now say a long phrase of random words is better. Something like correct horse battery staple. Easy to remember, nearly impossible for a computer to guess. But most websites still follow Bill Burr's 2003 rules, the ones he apologized for. So every 90 days you change your password to something impossible to remember and write it on a fresh sticky note. Number 5. Bicycle helmets. You put on a helmet to be safer, and from a direct impact, you are. The problem is what happens in the minds of the drivers around you. A researcher named Ian Walker rode a bike for thousands of miles with a sensor to measure how close cars passed him. He found that when he wore a helmet, drivers passed him an average of 3.3 inches closer than when he didn't. That's the difference between a safe pass and a side mirror clipping your handlebars at 40 miles per hour. The psychology is a form of risk compensation. A driver sees the helmet, and their brain subconsciously registers, protected person, give less space. They don't do it on purpose. Their brain just adjusts its own margin for error. Walker also tried wearing a long wig to appear female from behind. Drivers gave him even more room, suggesting their brains registered, potentially inexperienced person, give more space. The helmet absolutely protects your skull if you crash. It may also slightly increase the odds of that crash happening in the first place. Number 4. Light cigarettes. In the 1960s, people were starting to realize smoking was killing them, so the tobacco industry invented light cigarettes. These had tiny ventilation holes in the filter. The idea was that air would mix with the smoke, diluting it. Less tar, less nicotine, less death. But smokers' bodies noticed they were getting less nicotine, so they compensated. They smoked more cigarettes. They inhaled deeper. They held the smoke in their lungs longer. Because they were inhaling so deeply, the smoke was reaching parts of the lung it never reached before, the deeper, smaller airways. This caused a new type of lung cancer called adenocarcinoma. Before light cigarettes, this type was rare. After they became popular, it became the most common form of lung cancer. The safer cigarette didn't reduce cancer, it just changed the type. Internal documents showed the tobacco industry knew this was happening by the 1970s. They kept selling them for decades. The word light wasn't banned from packaging in the US until 2010. For half a century, people thought they were making a healthier choice. They weren't. Number 3. Reinforced cockpit doors. After 9/11, airlines made cockpit doors basically impossible to break through. Thick steel, reinforced frames, and locks that could hold back a battering ram. The idea was simple: keep the bad guys out. And it worked. No hijacker has broken through a reinforced cockpit door since they were installed. In 2015, a Germanwings co-pilot named Andreas Lubitz waited for the captain to use the bathroom. Then he locked the door from the inside. The captain came back, tried his keycard, knocked, then banged on the door. Nothing. Passengers could hear him trying to get back in, screaming, even using an axe from the cabin to try and break it down. The door held perfectly. It performed flawlessly. Meanwhile, Lubitz quietly pushed the controls forward and flew the plane into the French Alps at over 400 miles per hour. All 150 people on board were killed. The reinforced door did not cause the crash, but it made absolutely certain that nobody could stop it. Number 2. Child-proof caps. Child-proof caps came out in the 1970s. The idea was to stop kids from swallowing pills by using a cap that you have to push down and twist at the same time. It was a process many children couldn't figure out. Neither could grandma. Elderly people with arthritis, weak hands, or poor dexterity suddenly couldn't open their own life-saving medication. Want to know what they did? They transferred their pills into easy-open containers, old jam jars, Ziploc bags, anything they could open. Now those pills are in an unlabeled container with no dosage instructions, no warnings, and no expiration date. A bottle of mystery tablets sitting on the counter. The caps also gave parents a false sense of security. They figured the cap was doing the job, so they became less careful about where they stored medicine. It was left on counters, in purses, or anywhere a determined toddler with nothing but time could eventually figure out the push and twist puzzle. The safety feature designed to keep dangerous things locked up ended up putting them out in the open. Number 1. The Titanic's watertight compartments. The Titanic had a brilliant safety feature: watertight compartments. If the hull was breached, doors could seal off the flooded sections. The ship could stay afloat even if 4 of its 16 compartments flooded. The designers were so confident in this system, they called the ship unsinkable. The problem was the compartments were sealed at the bottom and sides, but not at the top. They were like an ice cube tray with no lid. When the iceberg ripped open not 4, but 5 compartments, water filled them up. All that weight pulled the nose of the ship down into the ocean. The back started rising out of the water, and because the ship was tilted so far forward, the water in the 5th compartment just spilled over the top of the bulkhead wall and into the 6th, and then the 7th, and so on, like a row of glasses being filled one by one. If the ship had no watertight compartments at all, the water would have spread evenly across the hull. The ship would have stayed level longer and sunk much slower, giving people more time to get into lifeboats. Instead, the very feature designed to keep the ship safe concentrated all the damage in the front, tipping the Titanic forward and dragging 1,500 people to their deaths faster than anyone thought possible.